My marriage ended at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, undone by a single photograph and my stubborn belief that honesty still mattered in this world. I'm Jake Harper, 35 years old, graphic designer by trade, and apparently a complete idiot by nature. I spent 8 years believing my wife Emily when she said she was working late, attending client meetings, and building her marketing career. Turns out the only thing she was building was a relationship with her married boss, Brandon Hunt. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with that Tuesday night, the night everything unraveled like a cheap sweater. I was sitting in our apartment, working on a logo design for a local bakery, when Emily texted, "Another late meeting with Brandon and the Peterson account. Don't wait up. Love you." I stared at that message, something cold settling in my stomach. Emily had been having a lot of late meetings lately. A lot of them involved Brandon Hunt, her boss, a smooth-talking marketing executive who wore expensive suits and drove a BMW like it was an extension of his personality. "Love you too," I texted back, though the words felt hollow as I typed them. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Tyler, my best friend and bartender at Malone's, the upscale restaurant downtown, where Emily claimed to be having all these business dinners. "Jake, you need to see this." The photo that followed hit me like a physical blow. There was Emily, my wife of 8 years, sitting in a corner booth at Malone's. But she wasn't with the Peterson account team. She was with Brandon Hunt, and they were sitting way too close for any business meeting I'd ever attended. His hand was on her thigh, her fingers were playing with his tie, and they were looking at each other like they were the only two people in the world. My hands started shaking. I set the phone down, picked it up again, stared at the photo until my eyes burned. Then Tyler sent another one. This time, they were kissing. 8 years of marriage, and this is how I find out my wife is cheating. Not through some dramatic confrontation or suspicious behavior I finally pieced together. Through a photograph sent by my bartender friend who happened to be working that night. I called Emily. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Same thing. The third time, she answered. "Jake, what's wrong? You sound upset. Where are you right now?" My voice was steadier than I felt. "I told you, I'm at a meeting with Brandon Hunt." "I know. Having a very intimate discussion about the Peterson account, I'm sure." Silence. Long, damning silence. "Jake, I can explain." "No need," I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. "Tyler sent me pictures. Very professional pictures. I especially like the one where you're discussing quarterly projections with your tongue down his throat." More silence. Then, "It's not what it looks like." I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Emily, it looks like my wife is cheating on me with her married boss in a public restaurant. What exactly should it look like?" "I'm coming home. We need to talk." "No," I said. "We really don't." I hung up and immediately called a locksmith. Emergency service cost extra, but some things are worth paying for. While I waited for the locksmith, I did what any rational, devastated husband would do. I gathered evidence. I saved the photos Tyler sent. I screenshot Emily's lies about working late. I went through our credit card statements and found dozens of charges at restaurants, hotels, and boutique shops I'd never heard of. The locksmith arrived at 11:30. Nice guy named Pete who didn't ask questions when I explained I needed the locks changed immediately because my wife was cheating. He just nodded and got to work. "Happens more than you'd think," Pete said, installing the new lock bolt. "You'd be surprised how many emergency lock changes I do for this exact reason." Somehow that doesn't make me feel better. Wasn't meant to. But at least you found out now instead of 10 years from now. Emily came home at midnight. I heard her key in the lock, heard her confusion when it didn't work, heard her knocking. Jake, open the door, we need to talk about this." I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, designing something new. Not a logo this time. A letter. "Jake, please! It's not what you think!" I kept typing. The knocking got more frantic. "Jake, I know you're in there. Your car is in the parking lot." I finished the letter, printed it, and slipped it under the door. "Emily," it read, "I've spent 8 years being your husband, but tonight I learned I was never your client. You hired someone else for that position. Consider our contract terminated. Your belongings will be packed and ready for pickup tomorrow. Don't bother with explanations. I've seen your work." The knocking stopped. I heard her crying on the other side of the door, but I felt nothing. Maybe the shock hadn't worn off yet. Maybe I was saving my emotional breakdown for later. Or maybe, just maybe, I was finally done being the nice guy who always got walked on. My phone started ringing. Emily's ringtone. I turned it off. I spent the rest of the night packing her things, methodically and carefully. I didn't break anything or throw her clothes around in a rage. I folded everything neatly, placed her jewelry in proper boxes, even wrapped her expensive perfume bottles in tissue paper. If she wanted to destroy our marriage, that was her choice. But I wasn't going to let her turn me into someone I wasn't. By morning, everything she owned was packed in boxes by the door. I'd also printed out copies of Tyler's photographs, along with a timeline of her lies about working late. I put one copy in an envelope addressed to her parents, another to her HR department, and a third to Brandon Hunt's wife, Marissa. Some people might call that cruel. I called it honesty, something that had been in short supply in my marriage lately. Wednesday morning brought Emily back to my door, this time with reinforcements. She'd brought her co-worker Greg, a spineless yes-man who'd probably helped cover for her affair. "Jake, please," Emily said through the door. "At least let me explain." I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. "Explain what? That you've been screwing your boss for months while lying to my face? That you've been spending our money on romantic dinners with another man? That every time you said you loved me, you were thinking about him?" Greg stepped forward. "Look, man, you're upset, but—" "Greg," I interrupted, "unless you want to explain why you've been helping my wife cheat, I suggest you stay out of this." His face went red. "I never—" "Really? Because I've got text messages where Emily thanks you for covering for her when she was sick last month. Funny thing is, she wasn't sick. She was at the Marriott downtown with Brandon. Room 412, if you're curious." Emily's face went white. "How did you—" "Credit card statements. Amazing what you can learn when you actually look at them." I'd spent the morning doing research, private investigator work, you might call it. Amazing how much information is available when you know where to look, and you're motivated by pure, crystallized anger. "Jake, please, just let me come inside. We can work this out." "No, we can't. Your stuff is packed. Take it and go." "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't know. Maybe Brandon has room at his place." "Oh, wait. He's married too, isn't he? With kids. I bet Marissa would love to hear about your work relationship." Emily's eyes widened. "You didn't." I smiled for the first time in 12 hours. "I mailed the photos this morning, along with a very detailed timeline of your extracurricular activities. Marissa should be getting them right about now." Greg grabbed Emily's arm. "We should go." "Smart man," I said. "Oh, and Greg, your boss might want to have a chat with you about company policy regarding workplace affairs. Just a heads up." They left with her boxes, Emily crying, Greg looking like he wanted to disappear into the sidewalk. I watched them load everything into Greg's car, then went back inside and called in sick to work. I had things to do. First, I drove to Emily's office, not to cause a scene, but to observe. I parked across the street and waited. At 10:30, Brandon Hunt arrived in his BMW, looking harried. At 11, a woman I recognized from Emily's Facebook photos as Marissa Hunt arrived in a Mercedes. She was carrying an envelope. I didn't need to see the rest. I could imagine that conversation. My phone rang. Tyler. "How you holding up?" he asked. "Better than expected. Thanks for the photos." "I'm sorry, man, I really am." but I figured you deserved to know. You did the right thing. Question for you. How long has this been going on? Tyler was quiet for a moment. Honestly, they've been coming in together for about 4 months. Always the same routine. Separate cars, but they'd sit together, get handsy, leave together. 4 months, a third of a year. While I was working late to pay for our apartment, our car, our life, Emily was building a whole other relationship. Tyler, I need a favor. Name it. I want to know everything about Brandon Hunt. Where he lives, where he goes, what he drives, everything. Jake, I'm not going to hurt him. I'm not going to break the law, but I am going to make sure he understands that actions have consequences. Tyler sighed. I'll see what I can find out. I spent the afternoon at the library, using their computers to research Brandon Hunt. Social media, LinkedIn, public records. The man lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs with his wife and teenage son. He drove that BMW, belonged to the country club, and posted pictures of family vacations that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. He was also, according to several business websites, being considered for a promotion to regional manager. A position that would mean more money, more prestige, and probably more opportunities to prey on his female employees. By evening, I had a plan. Not for revenge, exactly. For justice. There's a difference, though admittedly it's a subtle one. I went home and found a note slipped under my door. Emily's handwriting. Jake, I know you hate me right now, but please give me a chance to explain. It wasn't supposed to happen. It just did. Brandon and we connected on a professional level, and then it became something more. I never meant to hurt you. You're a good man, and you deserve better than what I've given you, but please don't destroy my career over this. I'm begging you. I read it twice, then threw it away. Too little, too late. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Marissa Hunt. I think we should talk. I met Marissa Hunt at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory where neither of us would cause a scene. She was exactly what I'd expected. Perfectly put together, expensive clothes, the kind of woman who'd never had to worry about money, but was now facing the possibility of losing half of everything. You're Jake, she said when I approached her table. It wasn't a question. And you're the other betrayed spouse. She smiled, but it was cold as winter. I prefer to think of myself as the wife with better lawyers. I sat down across from her. She was beautiful in that polished, upper-class way that Emily always envied. Looking at her, I could understand why Brandon's affair was particularly stupid. He'd risked losing this woman for what? A few months of excitement with his employee? Thank you for the photographs, Marissa said. And the timeline. Very thorough. I believe in being thorough. So do I. Which is why I've already filed for divorce and contacted my attorney about Brandon's use of company resources for his personal entertainment. I raised an eyebrow. Company resources? Those expensive dinners, the hotel rooms, all paid for with his corporate credit card. Apparently he's been billing your wife's services under client development. The irony was perfect. Brandon had been so arrogant, so sure he wouldn't get caught, that he'd left a paper trail leading directly back to him. What happens now? I asked. Now, Brandon loses everything. His job, his house, his reputation, and most of his money. I'm very good at being vindictive when properly motivated. And Emily? Marissa's smile got colder. What about her? She was sleeping with a married man, lying to her husband, and participating in what amounts to corporate fraud. I imagine her career prospects are about to become very limited. We talked for another hour. Marissa was smart, ruthless, and had resources I couldn't dream of. She'd already hired a private investigator who'd uncovered details about the affair that made my credit card research look amateur. They had a system, she explained. Brandon would schedule fake client meetings, Emily would request overtime, and they'd spend company money on their little romance. My investigator found receipts going back 6 months. 6 months. Even longer than Tyler had known about. "I have a proposition for you," Marissa said as we prepared to leave. "I'm going to destroy my husband professionally and financially. It's going to be very public and very thorough. Your wife is going to be collateral damage in that process. Are you comfortable with that?" I thought about Emily's note, her plea not to destroy her career. I thought about 8 years of marriage, of trust, of believing her lies. "Yes," I said. "I'm comfortable with that." "Good, because I have some ideas that might interest you." We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to stay in touch. As I watched Marissa drive away in her Mercedes, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The satisfaction of being on the winning side for once. That evening, Tyler called with information about Brandon. "Guy's got a routine," Tyler said. "Every Thursday night he goes to Murphy's gym on 5th Street. Works out alone, usually there until about 9. Drives that BMW, parks in the back lot where it's darker." "Interesting. Jake, whatever you're planning. I'm not planning anything violent if that's what you're worried about, but Brandon Hunt is about to learn that some people don't appreciate being walked on." Thursday night, I drove to Murphy's gym and waited. At 8:45, Brandon emerged, gym bag over his shoulder, looking like a man without a care in the world. He had no idea his wife had filed for divorce, no idea his corporate credit card usage was being audited, no idea his comfortable life was about to implode. He was about to get his first hint. I followed him to his BMW, parked 3 spaces away. As he unlocked his car, I approached. "Brandon Hunt?" He turned, saw me, and his face went pale. He knew who I was. "Jake, look, I can explain." "No need," I said, echoing the words I'd used with Emily. "I'm not here for explanations." "What do you want?" I looked at his BMW, pristine and expensive. "Nice car? Company lease?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just wondering if your wife knows about all the places you've driven it lately." "With my wife." Brandon straightened up, trying to look authoritative. "Look, what happened between Emily and me?" "What happened," I interrupted, "is that you decided to risk everything for a few months of excitement. Your marriage, your job, your reputation. Was it worth it?" "You don't understand. Emily and I, we have a connection." I laughed. "A connection? Is that what you call it when a boss manipulates his employee into an affair?" "Very romantic." "It wasn't like that." "Really?" "Because from where I stand, it looks like a middle-aged man in a position of power took advantage of a woman going through a rough patch in her marriage. Pretty textbook, actually." Brandon's face flushed. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Maybe not. But I know what your wife thinks about it, and your boss, and HR, and probably your son, once this all comes out." I could see the fear creeping into his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean, your comfortable little secret isn't secret anymore. Actions have consequences, Brandon. You're about to learn that the hard way." I walked back to my car, leaving him standing there in the parking lot. As I drove away, I saw him frantically checking his phone, probably calling Emily, probably realizing that his world was about to collapse. Good. It was about time. Friday morning brought the first real consequences. Emily called me at 7 a.m. sobbing, "Jake, they fired me. They actually fired me." I was having coffee, reading the news, enjoying the first peaceful morning I'd had in months. "Good morning to you too, Emily." "This isn't a joke. I lost my job. They said I violated company policy and ethics guidelines. They escorted me out like a criminal." Imagine that. Sleeping with your married boss violates company policy. Who could have seen that coming? "You did this. You and that snake, Marissa Hunt." I set down my coffee. "Emily, I didn't make you cheat. I didn't make you lie. I didn't make you use company resources to fund your affair. You did all that yourself. They're saying I might face criminal charges for misuse of company funds." "Criminal charges, Jake?" That was news to me, but not unwelcome news. Maybe you should have thought about that before you started billing your hotel rooms as business expenses. That was Brandon's idea. He said it was fine. And you believed him? Emily, you're 33 years old. You know the difference between right and wrong? She was crying harder now. I have nowhere to go. My parents won't talk to me. I can't afford an apartment without my job. I'm staying in a motel, Jake. A motel. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for her. But the larger part, the part that remembered 8 years of marriage and months of lies, felt nothing but satisfaction. You should have thought about that too. Please, Jake. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But I'm begging you, please don't let them destroy my life over this. Emily, I'm not destroying your life. You did that all by yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. I hung up and immediately called Marissa. Did you hear? She asked without preamble. Emily got fired. So did Brandon. This morning, security walked him out at 9 a.m. Apparently, the company takes a very dim view of executives who use corporate funds for personal entertainment. What about the criminal charges Emily mentioned? That's real. The company is considering filing charges for fraud and embezzlement. Brandon, too. They want to make an example. I felt a surge of satisfaction. How are you handling all this? Beautifully. I've frozen our joint accounts, filed for divorce, and had him served with papers at his office right before they fired him. He's currently staying at the Holiday Inn on Route 9, paying cash because I've canceled his credit cards. Marissa Hunt was thorough. I had to give her that. There's something else, she continued. I'm having a little gathering tomorrow night. A few friends, some neighbors, people from Brandon's work. I thought you might like to attend. What kind of gathering? The kind where everyone gets to hear the truth about Brandon and your wife. Very therapeutic. I grinned. I'd love to come. The gathering was at Marissa's house, a beautiful colonial in an upscale neighborhood where everyone knew everyone else's business. About 30 people were there, mostly couples from the country club and Brandon's former colleagues. Marissa had prepared a presentation. I wanted to share some information with all of you, she announced to the room, about why Brandon won't be joining us for social events anymore. She'd put together a slideshow, photos of Brandon and Emily at restaurants, hotels, and various romantic locations around the city, credit card receipts showing company funds used for personal expenses, text messages between them discussing their affair and laughing about deceiving their spouses. The room was silent as she clicked through slide after slide. These were Brandon's friends, his professional contacts, people who'd respected him. Watching their faces change from confusion to disgust was deeply satisfying. Brandon Hunt, Marissa concluded, is a liar, a cheat, and a thief. He stole from his company, betrayed his family, and destroyed another marriage in the process. I wanted all of you to know the truth about the man you thought you knew. After the presentation, people came up to me to offer sympathy and support. These were wealthy, connected people who could make or break careers in our city. Brandon Hunt's reputation was finished. I'm sorry you had to go through this, said Margaret Chen, whose husband was a partner at the city's most prestigious law firm. But you're better off without her. Thank you. I'm starting to realize that. If you need anything, legal advice, job references, anything at all, please let us know. What they did was inexcusable. By the end of the evening, I had business cards from half the room, potential clients for my graphic design work, people who wanted to help me rebuild my life. The same social network that was closing its doors to Brandon and Emily was opening its arms to me. Marissa walked me to my car. How do you feel? She asked. Better than I have in months. Good, because this is just the beginning. Brandon thinks he can wait this out, let things blow over. He's wrong. What's next? Next, we make sure everyone in this city knows exactly who Brandon Hunt and Emily Harper really are. By the time we're done, they'll have to leave town to find work. As I drove home, My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. I saw the photos online. Someone posted them on Facebook. Everyone is sharing them. My parents saw them, Jake. My parents. How could you do this to me? I didn't respond. Emily was finally facing the consequences of her choices, and I wasn't going to feel guilty about that. But this was just the beginning. Marissa was right. We were going to make sure Brandon and Emily understood that actions have consequences, and those consequences were going to follow them for a very long time. The social media campaign was Marissa's idea, but I have to admit, I enjoyed helping with the execution. Within a week, photos of Brandon and Emily were circulating on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Not just the restaurant pictures Tyler had taken, but professional quality surveillance photos Marissa's private investigator had captured. The key, Marissa explained over coffee, is to make it impossible for them to rebuild their lives here. Every potential employer, every landlord, every person they might try to date needs to know who they really are. She'd created fake social media accounts and was systematically contacting everyone in Brandon and Emily's networks. Former colleagues, college friends, distant relatives, everyone was getting the full story, complete with photographic evidence. My contribution was more creative. I designed a website called honestymatters.com and filled it with a detailed timeline of the affair, complete with receipts, text messages, and photos. I made sure it showed up first when anyone Googled either of their names. This is brilliant, Marissa said, scrolling through the site. Professional quality, easy to navigate, and completely devastating. I do good work when I'm motivated. The website got over 10,000 views in the first week. People were sharing the link, commenting, adding their own stories about workplace affairs and cheating spouses. Brandon and Emily had become cautionary tales. Emily called me repeatedly, begging me to take it down. Jake, please, this is destroying my life. I can't get a job interview because everyone knows about the website. I can't even rent an apartment because landlords are Googling me. Good, I said. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat. I made a mistake. I'm human. Don't I deserve a second chance? You made a choice, Emily. Every day for 6 months, you chose to lie to me, to cheat on me, to steal from your company. Those weren't mistakes. They were deliberate decisions. I loved you, Jake. I still love you. No, you don't. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You loved the security I provided while you were off playing house with Brandon. The truth was, I was enjoying this. For 8 years, I'd been the accommodating husband, the one who compromised, who gave in, who made excuses for Emily's behavior. Now, for the first time in our relationship, I had the power, and I was using it. Brandon tried a different approach. He showed up at my apartment on a Thursday night, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Jake, we need to talk. No, we don't. Please, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, the confident executive persona completely gone. You've made your point, he said. You've destroyed both our careers, our reputations, everything. Isn't that enough? Enough? Brandon, you spent 6 months screwing my wife while I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for the life she was living. You used company money to fund your affair. You lied to everyone, your wife, your son, your colleagues, me. And you think a few weeks of consequences is enough? I lost everything. My job, my family, my house. Marissa took everything in the divorce. I'm living in a motel, Jake. I can't even get interviews because of that website you made. Boo-hoo. He stared at me. What happened to you? You used to be a decent guy. I still am. I'm just not a pushover anymore. There's a difference. This isn't decent. This is vindictive. You're right. It is vindictive. And you know what? It feels great. Brandon left, and I didn't see him again for 2 weeks. When I did, it was at the grocery store, and he looked even worse. Thinner, older, defeated. He saw me and quickly turned down another aisle. The final blow came from an unexpected source. Emily's parents. I'd sent them copies of the photos and timeline early on, but I hadn't heard from them since. Then, on a Saturday morning, Emily's father called me. "Jake, this is Robert Morrison, Emily's dad." "Mr. Morrison, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I wanted to apologize for Emily, for what she put you through. We raised her better than this." "I appreciate that. We also wanted you to know that we've cut off contact with her. We can't support what she did, and we won't enable her to avoid the consequences." That hit me harder than I'd expected. Emily's parents had always been good to me, treated me like a son. Knowing they were on my side felt like validation. "We're also planning to attend your divorce hearing," Robert continued, "as character witnesses for you." "You don't have to do that." "Yes, we do. Emily destroyed a good marriage and hurt a good man. The least we can do is make sure the court knows the truth." After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: closure. Emily had lost everything: her job, her reputation, her family, her friends. She was facing potential criminal charges and had no prospects for rebuilding her life in our city. Brandon was in the same situation: divorced, unemployed, blacklisted from his industry, living in a motel and paying cash because his credit was destroyed. They'd both learned that actions have consequences. The lesson had been expensive, but thorough. My phone buzzed with a text from Marissa. "Brandon's moving to Phoenix next week. Apparently he found a job at a small marketing firm there. Should we let his new employers know about his history?" I thought about it for a long moment, then typed back, "No. Let him go. He's learned his lesson." "You're more forgiving than I am." Maybe I was, or maybe I was just tired of carrying the anger. Brandon and Emily were broken, defeated, and facing years of rebuilding their lives from nothing. That felt like enough. But I wasn't quite done yet. There was one more thing I needed to do. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in November, exactly 6 months after I'd discovered Emily's affair. I arrived early, wearing my best suit and carrying a folder thick with evidence I probably wouldn't need. Emily was already there with her lawyer, a tired-looking public defender who'd probably told her she had no chance of getting anything in the settlement. She looked terrible, thin, pale, wearing a cheap dress that didn't fit properly. The confident, polished woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone who looked defeated and desperate. Her parents were there too, sitting on my side of the courtroom. When Emily saw them, her face crumpled, but they didn't acknowledge her. They'd made their choice. Marissa attended as well, elegantly dressed and radiating satisfaction. Her divorce from Brandon had been finalized the previous month, and she'd gotten everything: the house, the cars, the investments, even Brandon's pension. She nodded to me as she took a seat. The hearing itself was anticlimactic. Emily's lawyer tried to argue for alimony, claiming she'd supported my career during our marriage. My lawyer, recommended by Marissa's contacts, systematically destroyed that argument with evidence of Emily's affair, her misuse of company funds, and her ongoing legal troubles. "Your Honor," my lawyer said, "Mrs. Harper chose to end this marriage when she began a 6-month affair with her supervisor. She chose to violate her employment contract and potentially break the law by misusing company resources. She chose to lie to her husband repeatedly and systematically. The dissolution of this marriage is entirely due to her actions, and she should not be rewarded for that behavior." The judge agreed. No alimony, no division of assets beyond Emily's personal belongings. She got nothing except the debt from her legal fees and the criminal charges she was still facing. As we left the courthouse, Emily tried to approach me. "Jake, please." "We're done, Emily. We have been for 6 months. I know I hurt you, but you didn't just hurt me. You destroyed our marriage, your career, and your relationship with your family. You chose Brandon Hunt over everything else in your life. I hope he was worth it." She started crying, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved for 8 years was gone, if she'd ever really existed at all. What stood before me was a stranger who'd worn my wife's face while lying to me every day. I walked away and didn't look back. That evening, Tyler and I celebrated at Malone's, the same restaurant where Emily and Brandon had conducted their affair. Ironic, but fitting. "So what now?" Tyler asked over beer and wings. "Now I rebuild. New apartment, new clients, new life." "Any regrets about how you handled all this?" I thought about it seriously. No. They made their choices, and they faced the consequences. That's how the world is supposed to work. You know people are calling you ruthless, right? The way you and Marissa destroyed them both. Good. Maybe the next married man who thinks about cheating on his wife will remember what happened to Brandon Hunt. Maybe the next woman who thinks about having an affair will remember Emily Harper. If our story prevents even one marriage from being destroyed, then it was worth it. Tyler raised his beer. To honesty. To consequences, I replied. We drank, and I felt genuinely happy for the first time in months. My marriage was over, but my life was just beginning. I had new clients, new friends, and a new understanding of my own worth. Emily and Brandon had taught me an important lesson, though not the one they'd intended. They'd shown me that I didn't have to accept being treated badly. I didn't have to be the nice guy who always got walked on. I could fight back, and I could win. 6 months later, I ran into Greg, Emily's former co-worker who'd helped cover for her affair. He was working at a coffee shop, having been fired from the marketing firm shortly after Emily. "Jake," he said nervously, "how are you doing?" "Great, actually. Business is booming. How about you?" He gestured around the coffee shop. "Still looking for something in marketing, but it's tough. The whole scandal kind of followed everyone who was involved." "That's unfortunate. Look, I want you to know, I never encouraged Emily to cheat. I didn't want to get involved." "Greg, you helped her lie to me for months. You covered for her when she was stealing from the company and destroying our marriage. You were involved whether you wanted to be or not." He looked down. "I know. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything. But maybe next time someone asks you to help them cheat, you'll remember how this turned out." I left him there, looking miserable behind the counter of a coffee shop, and felt no sympathy at all. He'd made his choice, too. As I drove home to my new apartment, I thought about Emily and Brandon. According to Marissa's sources, Emily had moved back in with her parents in another state, still facing criminal charges and unable to find work in marketing. Brandon was in Phoenix, working for a fraction of his previous salary and living in a studio apartment. They'd both learned that actions have consequences. The lesson had cost them everything, but some lessons are expensive. I pulled into my parking space and looked up at my apartment building. It wasn't as nice as the place Emily and I had shared, but it was mine. Paid for with money I'd earned honestly, furnished with things I'd chosen, lived in by someone who finally understood his own worth. My phone buzzed with a text from a new client, someone who'd been referred by one of Marissa's friends. Another logo design, another chance to build something real and lasting. I smiled and headed upstairs. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new chances to prove that honesty still mattered in this world.